Hey, church girl. So you have been taught to examine your behavior, but no one taught you to examine your yes. And that is where your life has been quietly shifting in ways you did not intend. Some of your greatest struggles are not coming from disobedience. They are coming from agreement. Agreement with things God never said, never required, and never assigned to you. Stay with me, because if you truly understand this, it will change how you make decisions for the rest of your life. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Brenda Muzan, and I help Christian women, church girls, break the patterns that look right on the outside but are misaligned at the root. And what I am about to walk you through is not surface level. This is going to require you to see your life differently, because some of you are not tired because life is hard. You are tired because you have been carrying assignments with heaven's name on them that heaven never actually gave you. Some of you said yes to serving on another committee when you were already running on fumes. Some of you said yes to lending money you could not afford to give because you did not want to look selfish. And some of you said yes to staying available to people who only call when they need rescue. And now you are praying for peace while still protecting the very pattern that keeps stealing it. So today, I want to share 5 lessons showing the cost of saying yes to what God didn't assign to you. Are you ready? Lesson 1. Your yes is forming agreements that direct your life. Since every time you say yes, you are not simply responding to a moment, you are entering into an agreement. And agreements determine direction. Scripture says in Amos 3:3, can 2 walk together unless they agree? And the question is not just about relationships, it is about alignment. Your life moves in the direction of what you consistently agree with, whether that agreement is intentional or not. So when you say yes out of pressure, out of guilt, or out of fear of disappointing someone, you are not just helping, you are aligning yourself with something that now has influence over your time, your energy, and your emotional capacity. That is why you can look up and feel like your life has drifted, because your yes has been leading you more than your prayers have been correcting you. If you miss this, you will continue trying to fix outcomes without examining the agreements that created them. This is for the woman who says yes to every church request, then wonders why she has no margin for her own healing. This is the woman who keeps saying yes to adult children in ways that keep her emotionally overextended. This is the friend who is always available to listen and advise and cover and fund and rescue, but cannot remember the last time she had enough left over for herself. You thought you were just being loving, but what if In reality, you were entering agreements that were quietly directing your life away from peace. Look at Eve in Genesis. The issue was not only the fruit, the deeper issue was agreement. She entertained a voice God never authorized, and once she agreed with it, her direction changed. The enemy did not need to drag her, he only needed her agreement. And many of you are rebuking devils in prayer while holding and still agreeing with patterns that keep producing the same pain. Stay with me, because this is where many of us begin to see that what we thought was kindness was actually misalignment. Lesson 2. You have been rewarded for self-abandonment. You were not only taught to say yes, you were affirmed for it. And over time, that affirmation shaped your identity. You were called dependable, strong, selfless, and reliable. And none of those things are wrong on their own, but they become dangerous when they required you to ignore yourself in order to maintain them. So psychologically, your mind began to associate saying yes with connection and approval, while associating saying no with the risk of rejection or disconnection. That means your decisions are no longer just about what is right. They are about what feels safe relationally and emotionally. This is why Galatians 1:10 becomes so important when it asks whether you are seeking to please God or people. Because the answer to that question is not in what you say you believe, it is in how you decide under pressure. If your sense of self is tied to being the one who always shows up, then every opportunity to say no will feel like a threat to your identity. And that is why it feels so difficult to change even when you know something is off. This is the church girl who says, I'm just the one everybody depends on. But listen carefully, sis. Being needed is not the same as being assigned. Being praised is not the same as being aligned. And many women have built an identity around being indispensable because somewhere deep down, they fear that if they stop performing, they will stop being valued. Think about Martha in Luke chapter 10. Martha was serving and moving and working and handling responsibilities, and from the outside, it looked admirable. But Jesus exposed something deeper. She was troubled and distracted by much serving. Let that sit. Serving was not the issue. Misaligned serving was. Service that disconnects you from the presence of God is not holy just because it looks helpful. Some of you have been Martha in every room, faithful on the outside, frustrated on the inside, and mad that nobody notices how much you are carrying. But Jesus never asked Martha to prove her love through exhaustion. And neither does he ask you to do that. Number 3, you are mistaking access for assignment. One of the most subtle patterns in your life is that you have confused what reaches you with what is meant for you. Just because something is presented to you does not mean it has been assigned to you. And just because you are capable of doing something does not mean you are called to carry it. Even in scripture, Jesus had access to crowds and needs and expectations. Yet he regularly withdrew, as seen in Mark 1:35, because access did not determine his assignment. His alignment with the Father did. If you do not understand this distinction, you will fill your life, sis, with responsibilities that feel important but are not purposeful. And the result will be a life that is full but not focused, busy but not aligned. This is where your exhaustion is actually coming from. Not from the amount you are doing, but from the misalignment between what you are carrying and what you were actually called to carry. Some of you think, well, it came to me, so I must handle it. No, sis. A need in your inbox is not automatically a mandate from God. A crisis in your family is not always your burden to solve. A ministry gap does not mean you must become the filler. Sometimes access is a test, not an assignment. That's why it's important to ask God, what is it that you want me to do? And listen. Look at Moses when his father-in-law Jethro spoke to him in Exodus 18. Moses was trying to handle everything for everybody all day long. He had access to all the needs. He had the wisdom. He had the leadership. He had the people. But Jethro told him plainly, the thing that you do is not good. Why? Because capacity is not permission to carry everything. Some of you are drowning under responsibility simply because you are good at handling things. But what you can do and what you are called to do are not always the same thing. Lesson 4. Your body is telling you the truth. You keep overriding. Sis, there is a level of awareness in you that has not disappeared. It has simply been ignored. Your body responds before your mind fully processes what is happening. And that response shows up as hesitation, as tension, or a quiet resistance that you cannot always explain. That is not confusion. That is information. Because you have been trained to override that signal in order to respond quickly or keep peace, you have weakened your trust in it. And over time, this creates internal conflict because part of you knows something is not aligned, while another part of you continues to move forward anyway. Scripture reminds us in 1 Corinthians 14:33 that God is not the author of confusion, which means that when you feel consistently conflicted, that it is not because clarity is absent, it is because it is being ignored. And the longer you override what you feel, the harder it becomes to recognize it. And that is how patterns become deeply rooted without you realizing when they started. You know what this looks like, right? Your stomach tightens when the phone rings and you see that name, right? Your shoulders tense when someone says, "Can you just do me a favor?" You feel dread before the event you already agreed to attend. You feel irritation after sending the money, answering the call, taking on the project, or agreeing to the burden, to the extra burden. But because you have spiritualized endurance, you call that discomfort, sacrifice, when sometimes it is discernment trying to get your attention. Look at Jonah. Before the storm ever exposed him, his misalignment was already in motion. He was moving, but not in peace. Some of you are still moving, but your body has been carrying the truth your mouth will not say. You are getting headaches, tensions, fatigue, you're irritable, brain fog, and emotional numbness. And you keep calling it stress when some of it is the internal cost of repeatedly violating your own God-given boundaries. And number 5, the cost of your yes shows up in places you did not expect. The most dangerous part of this pattern is that the cost of your yes does not always appear where the decision was made. You may say yes in one moment, but experience the consequence somewhere else entirely. You say yes to helping someone and later feel the weight in your emotional capacity. You say yes to giving and later feel the strain in your finances. You say yes to staying in something, in a toxic relationship, and later feel the disconnection in your spirit. Galatians 6:7 teaches that whatever a person sows, they will also reap. And what you are sowing is not just action, sis. It is agreement. Your life is responding to the agreements you have made, even the ones you did not realize you were making. That is why everything can feel connected, because it is. And until you begin to trace your outcomes back to your decisions, you will continue to experience results that feel confusing and are actually consistent. Let me make it plain. In other words, you say yes to being available for everyone, and then wonder why you are emotionally unavailable for yourself. You say yes to overspending because you want to look and feel generous, and then panic when your own needs arise. You say yes to staying in draining conversations because you do not want to seem rude, and then wonder why your spirit feels heavy afterward. You say yes to one more task, one more favor, one more obligation, one more role, and then privately tell God you are burned out. But sis, burnout is not always proof that you are under attack. Sometimes it is evidence that you have been over agreeing. Let's look at Abraham and Sarah with Hagar. The pain that followed did not begin in the wilderness. It began with an agreement made in a private moment of impatience and pressure. One decision created a consequence that reached far beyond the original moment. That is how misaligned yeses work. They do not stay contained, they spill. So how do you begin to change this? This pattern does not break through intention alone. It breaks through interruption, and that interruption has to happen in the moment where you would normally override yourself. The first step is to pause, before you respond. Because without a pause, you are reacting, not deciding. The second step is to ask yourself what you are actually feeling, not what is needed or expected, but what is true for you in that moment. From there, you must identify the source of the pressure, whether it is guilt, fear, obligation, or true alignment. And then allow yourself to delay your response long enough to choose from clarity instead of urgency. Finally, you must tell the truth, even if it feels uncomfortable, because that moment of discomfort is often the doorway to alignment. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about finally responding in a way that reflects what you already know. Here's what this can sound like in real life. Instead of saying yes on the spot, you say, "Let me pray about that and get back to you." Instead of lending money from guilt, you say, "I'm not able to do that right now." Instead of joining another ministry responsibility because they ask publicly, you say, "I can't commit to that in this season. I cannot commit to that in this season." And instead of answering every late night emotional emergency, you say, "I care, but I do not have the capacity to hold this conversation right now." That is not rebellion. That is stewardship of your time, of your emotional capacity. And here is your simple action plan for this week. Before you say yes this week, do these 4 things. Pause, pray, ask what is driving this response, and then answer slowly. Pause so urgency does not decide for you. Pray so pressure is not louder than God. Ask what is driving this response: guilt, fear, image, obligation, or peace. Then answer slowly, because rushed yeses are often expensive yeses. Sis, what you have been calling exhaustion is not just the result of doing too much. It is the weight of agreements you are never meant to carry. And now you have to decide what you are going to do with what you see. Because awareness without action will keep you in the same cycle. This is exactly why I created the guide, Church Girl Heal, You Cannot Pray This Away. Not to give you more information, but to give you structure. Because the truth is, you already know where this shows up in your life. But the problem has never been a lack of awareness. It has been a lack of interruption. The guide walks you through how to recognize these patterns in real time, how to separate pressure from alignment, and how to respond differently in the exact moments where you usually override yourself. This is where you stop managing the cycle and start breaking it at the root. And I want to be clear with you. This is not something you fix by thinking about it more. This is something you change by practicing something different consistently with guidance. That is what the guide gives you. It meets you in your real decisions, not just your intentions. So here is my challenge to you. Do not leave this teaching inspired and unchanged. Go by the Church Girl Heal, You Can't Pray This Away, and start doing the work of breaking these patterns where they actually live in your decisions, in your relationships, in your giving, in your boundaries, and in your daily choices. The link is in the description. And sis, while you are doing that, keep your eyes open for the 30-day Break Patterns coaching experience happening in June. Because some of you do not just need a word, you need structure, support, and real interruption. Next week, we are shifting into something even deeper. We are moving into what this pattern does to your mental and emotional health when it goes unaddressed. Because many of you have been separating your spiritual life from your mental state. And the truth is, they are directly connected. We are going to talk about what happens to your mind when you keep overriding yourself, why you feel mentally exhausted even when you are spiritually committed, and what it actually takes to experience peace that is not temporary. So now the decision is in front of you. Not just what you understand, but what you are willing to change. If you are ready to stop repeating this pattern, start with the guide. By Church Girl Heal. You can't pray this away. The link is in the description. And get ready for June, sisters. We are going to break these cycles, these patterns that keep us stuck in overriding ourselves and keeps us drained. Because freedom does not come from knowing. It comes from choosing differently when it matters. Until next week, I'm Dr. Brenda, and this is Church Girl Heal.